Oh, well, still wonky in it.
Good morning again, indeed, everybody. And look, he's made us even more wonky. And happy St George's Day. I see you're dressed for the occasion.
Yep. You didn't tell me till I was halfway down the bottle.
Anyway, look, go on then. You're leading this, aren't you?
Am I? Oh, okay. So we've been looking at the plastic part of the licence and whether, if it's out of date, whether you can still drive and stuff like that. What a minefield that is. So basically, if it's out of date, the licence is out of date, i.e. the plastic card bit, but not your entitlement to drive, because they're on the back and they carry on going. There's a lot of debate online, various websites, legal websites, police, etc., about whether you can or can't drive, really. And the bottom line is, I think you can, because you're not committing an offence by driving without it, but you're committing an offence by not having it up to date. So even if you're not driving, you're committing that offence, if that makes sense, because it's in your pocket or it's in your possession and it's not dated correctly. There's a lot of debate whether you're insured or not. Some legal experts saying you should be insured because you're not driving outside your entitlements, but some insurance companies saying they won't insure you if you don't have a valid
Photo. It's the photo bit.
Yeah.
So the 4B on your licence, the actual photo bit.
So I don't know what to say about it, really. I would say that I would make sure that pupils have an up-to-date one. If they come to you and it's only got 6 months or so on it, then I would probably get them to renew it. If you renew it, you get one from the date you renewed, not from the date that it expired.
Yeah.
So if you renew it early, you're going to lose a little bit. I think it's 20 quid for 6 years, 10 years, so it's pennies, isn't it? Just to stop that problem of going to test or potentially going to test or theory test with it not being valid. Even though in theory they still take people out. I don't know about theory tests.
Yeah,
But in theory, the practical test, they take people out.
Yeah, so just to confirm that if you have a pupil whose photo part of their driving licence has expired, the driving test will go ahead on the condition that, of course, the photograph bears a resemblance to the person that is holding the licence. But then that is no different even if the photo was in date, of course. Yeah. So the photo clearly has to look or bear a resemblance, which is quite different to the person who has it. But the test would go ahead. Now the difference is that if a test went ahead with an invalid photo part of the licence, the examiners wouldn't send that licence off. That's not an option. The people would have to do it for themselves.
And from your perspective, the only time they would be breaking the law would be if it's been revoked. But you wouldn't know if it's been revoked or not. So this comes about checking the licence, which we'll probably talk about in more detail tomorrow. So I just wouldn't risk it if they haven't got a valid one. You don't know why they haven't got a valid one, whether they've just been lazy or whether actually they haven't been given a new one for whatever reason. So I would make sure that it's within date. And there could be an insurance issue. Certainly the articles I was reading just now were about fleet trainers refusing to take people out because the company policies were saying that their the ADI insurance was saying the person must have a valid photo or valid photo licence. So it would depend on your insurance and the exact wording, whether it's valid licence or valid photo licence, because they're two different things. Licence is your licence to drive to your 70, and the valid
Photo
thing
bit
is only every 10 years. So it would depend on your policy. I just wouldn't risk it, really, because there was a lawyer saying on a sort of an article that he did that they, you're not breaking the law, therefore you would be insured. But in my mind, known insurance companies, they can put what stipulations they want on it. And if their stipulation is you must have a valid photo licence, then you must have a valid photo licence. So it would depend on your insurance, therefore I wouldn't risk it unless you want to go through reams of paper and phone up their compliance department and everything.
How many people are out there with invalid photos?
3.3 million.
3.3 million. Go and have a look at your own licence.
Yeah,
that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Go and have a little look at your own licence.
They're supposed to write to you, and I'm sure they do write to you, but if you've moved and you've not updated, or sometimes the post doesn't arrive, or don't bother opening it or whatever, then you could be in trouble. You will be breaking the law, which is up to £1,000 fine, and they can revoke your licence. And of course, if you've moved address and you haven't had the update, it could have been revoked for you, or your pupils particularly could have been revoked. So I wouldn't be taking them out without a valid photo license. I don't know about you, but I never have done. I think it's worth just giving them to renew. It takes 3 or 4 days to come through, and then you're all good, aren't you?
I've only had it a couple of times actually. I've only had it a couple of times with people who have had a provisional licence at the age of 17, like many of them do, because it acts as a form of ID. But actually, they're not learned to drive until some years later, and had to renew.
You're not gonna get that with an 18-year-old, but you only gone over 27 onwards. It's possible, isn't it? So it's certainly worth checking. And if you do fleet training, and if you do ADI stuff, that's very possible on an ADI. But to make sure that they have got a valid, because they would be, old enough to not have a valid one. So I don't think there's any great conclusions there. The only conclusion I would say is that I wouldn't risk it. They can take a test, but they could invalidate the insurance depending on your insurance policy. Therefore, I wouldn't be risking it personally. Okay, and
That'll
check your
do.
own, as Lou says.
Yeah, check your own.
That'd be interesting. Right, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yes. Well, we'll look at what we should be checking, how
Yeah.
we should be checking it, and at what point we would and we wouldn't be taking somebody out on
Yeah.
a lesson.
We will.
Yep.
See you then.
Oh yes, just make that point about it could be less due to medical reasons.
You can have a 3-year medical
Yeah.
license. So yeah, it's worth checking. So there are various stipulations. Over 70s every 3 years. I think medical can be
Yeah.
different depending on what one it is, doesn't
Yeah.
it? It goes for something. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
The photo itself, though,
It's valid.
is valid.
So that would be the bits on the back as opposed to the actual what we're talking about. But it's
Yeah.
a valid point for sure. That's entitlement to drive as opposed to the actual photo card.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a good point. Absolutely.
Okay. We'll
Okay.
look at that. Maybe that will come
Yeah,
in
so
tomorrow.
that will come into tomorrow.
into
Yeah,
tomorrow's.
because that's what they're entitled to drive when they're entitled to drive in. So.
Okay.
Okay, no.
Have a good St George's Day, everybody.
Bye bye.